Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you to this evening's Hire's weekly webinar. Today we're going to be talking about something which all of us as educators are almost always wondering. Are our students really learning anything? And if at all, what are they learning? How do we know what they're learning? And how can we learn how to learn better? So before we begin today's session, I just wanted to start out by welcoming all of you to Hire. Hire is an online live learning platform for K-12 educators. For those of you who have been with us on our weekly webinar journey, welcome back and thank you for being such consistent, wonderful participants. And to those of you who are here for the first time, we welcome all of you to Hire and we hope that you enjoy today's session. I'm going to start out very quickly by sharing my screen and talking to all of you a little bit about our housekeeping rules before we get started. In today's session, we are not going to be able to hear any of you, as you know. We don't use the raise your hand feature. However, we do expect that all of you ask questions, that you share all of your inputs and your insights, as well as talk to one another. So make as much use of the chat box and of the Q&A box as you would like. In addition to that, we also ask you to ask our panelists lots of questions. So there's a Q&A box for that. You'll notice this time that in the Q&A box, there is also an option to upvote questions. So you'll be able to see all the questions that are popping in and the questions that you want to answer, that you want should get answered first. Go right ahead and upvote those. You'll be able to see that little upvoting option right at the corner of every question. So go ahead and upvote for that. In addition to that, what we also have, as an offering for our Facebook Live participants is that somebody will be directing those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live, whatever questions that you have that do come up during the session, when you pop them into today's, in the chat, somebody will be relaying those questions to us, so you don't have to feel left out. We'll be answering questions for all of you, even if you are not here in our Zoom session, if you're in the Facebook session. Also, as always, our webinars do now come with certificates, and we're extremely happy to be able to offer these to you. However, there is a little bit of a catch to how you can get these certificates. To be able to qualify for certificates, we expect that you either submit a response, which is either a sketch note or a drawing depicting your key takeaways, or a classroom activity or an idea that was inspired by today's session, or a 150-word reflection on any of the ideas that you found most interesting in today's session. And each of these, of course, will be vetted and reviewed by our team. We expect all of you to send in your submissions by Sunday, 6 p.m. And when these come in, we'll review them and we will be able to share these out with all of you as soon as we're able to review them. Okay, so we also wanted to share today, very specially, all those of you who were super contributors to our session last week. These super contributors were people who sent in very, very interesting contributions as reflections to our webinar from last week, which was on designing authentic assessments. So I wanted to share the names of some very, very fantastic contributions that came in and are this week's super presenters. First up, we have Namita Rajput. Namita is from Navrachna Vidyani Vidyalay. We also have Nidhi Sadhwani. Nidhi is, oops, sorry, just give me 1 second. Nidhi is from Shiv Nadar School. We also have Jansi Manoharan from SRV International School. Arshen Yada, again from Shiv Nadar School. Manisha Mathur from Bal Bharti Public School. Gitanjali Das Gupta from Legacy School. Preeti Sara Abraham, again from Legacy School, Radha Rajesh from New Horizon Public School, and Meena Kumari Damre from Delhi Public School. Some of these teachers have sent in absolutely beautiful submissions. Radha, for example, has sent us a lesson plan that she designed using rafts, which was explained in our session last time. We also have this beautiful sketch note that was sent to us by Jency, who's talked about also making her assessments transdisciplinary. In addition to that, we had this beautiful submission from Meena Kumari, who put in her ideas in this lovely little sketch note. And we were also able to have a lovely submission on maths and how math can actually be taught using dance and drama. So this is a picture from our participant who was actually using dance and drama and the creative arts to talk about math and have students recognize different shapes using that. So these are some of the lovely submissions that came in this week. And for today's session, of course, our focus is going to be on making learning visible. How is it that our students can show us what they've learned, and how do we map their progress? And in order to talk about all of what comes into making learning visible, today's panelists are going to be talking to you about two very, very crucial things. The first of these is teacher clarity. How do you as a teacher understand exactly what is it that your students have learned, and what are some of these gaps? And what sort of frameworks can you put in place to be able to get more clarity on where your students are on their learning curve and where they need to go in order to achieve the learning outcomes that you have set out for them for that particular unit or for that particular semester, even for that matter. And how can students make their learning more pronounced to you? In addition to that, we'll be looking at some visible thinking and learning strategies as well. And to those of you who are sketchnoting enthusiasts, we also have with us today one of our panelists who's going to be talking to us about how sketchnotes can actually be made more integral to your classroom teaching practices, and how students can use these sketchnotes to actually show you what they've been learning. So without further ado, let me very quickly welcome today's panelists to our session. First up is Judy Imamuddin. Judy is a primary years expert. She's also the curriculum coordinator at the American School of Belo Horizonte in Brazil. Judy, welcome. We're very, very excited to have you with us in today's session. Judy is going to be talking to us about teacher clarity. She's also going to be talking to us today a lot about some of these frameworks that she's put in place with her teachers at her school and how we can make the most of these. Our second panelist today is Kirtida. Kirtida is a PYP educator, and she is the PYP coordinator at Crossroads International School in Udaipur. And Kirtida is also our resident sketchnoting expert. So she is going to be talking to us about how we can use sketchnotes to have our students make their learning more visible. So without further ado, I'm going to get started with today's session, and I'm going to call on our first panelist, Judy. So Judy, over to you to talk to us about teacher clarity and making thinking visible.
Awesome. Thank you. It's so good to be here with everyone tonight. This is such a treat. Let me go ahead. I'm going to share my presentation. And just kidding. This is the fun part of being online, right? So here we go. So just to begin, I'm just super curious. What is your context? We're going to share a poll right now. And I'm just wondering, what's happening with you in the world? 2020 has been so fascinating. Are you completely online? Are you in a hybrid model? Or are you back to face-to-face? So what is currently your context? If we could share that, okay? I can see that poll. So what are your learning conditions? I can tell you right now in Brazil, we are completely online. We've been online since March 19th, 2020. and we started our school year online. So this is really interesting times. So what is it for you? We are, submit your results.
Okay, I think we
And
have.
can we share the results?
Yep.
So excited to find out. 78% of you are completely online. 18% of you are in a hybrid situation, and 4% of you, a little bit jealous, are face-to-face with kids. So I think that today's topic is going to be really timely and important because it's going to be about teacher clarity in the context of distance learning. And so with that in mind, we're really going to be focused on two goals today. The first one is, what is teacher clarity for this online context? And the other one is about the structures and strategies that could support our learners online.
Julie, just sorry to interrupt. Just a quick reminder to optimize your slides. We're not being able to see all of your slides. If you could just go full screen on them.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, okay. All right, so, okay. So then, let's take a look at some of the areas that we can discuss around teacher clarity. There's three main areas that we need to be thinking about as teachers. And these are some great suggestions that were offered through the book Distance Learning, which was the Distance Learning Playbook by Doug Fisher. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. And there's three areas that we've had to consider as a school to really get good at when it comes to teacher clarity. The first one is organization. Like, how is our lesson tasks being designed? Our communications with our families, and of course the learning expectations that we have for students. The other big area has been through our explanation. We have to be really good at presenting content to kids, and that requires some exemplars and some guided practice to really support our learners online. And of course the third way is assessment. And in particular, we'll focus on feedback, because feedback is probably the area that we give a lot of teacher input regarding the learning that's happening. So we have to get good at feedback with online learning. Visible learning has three main questions when we think about teacher clarity. The first one is, what am I learning? Why am I learning it? And how am I going to learn it? So with that in mind, our school, we got together and we started with synchronized learning. I don't know if you guys started with asynchronized learning, asynchronized learning, or if you started with synchronized learning like Zoom or Google Meets, but we started with just Seesaw because Seesaw had been our go-to platform prior to COVID. And so it was the most comfortable area for us to begin. And we realized that when we made activity posts, we had to be super clear in what we wanted our post to look like. So we actually dissected the anatomy of a Seesaw post. We didn't want any mysteries for children because this was the way that they were going to be really learning, was through this platform. And so you'll see in part of the area, we had instructions and success criteria. We also included translation and audio instructions in there because we have a lot of bilingual students here. And then the instructional content was mandatory. We either had to have a video, some sort of student exemplar, a link. So we wanted to make sure that kids could be successful in the online environment. So I'd like to sort of show you an example of this and whether or not, be thinking about this, is this effective or not? Because ultimately you'll take this information and you'll apply it to your context, right? So here's an example of a Seesaw post. You can see, we're a PYP school, so our learning intentions are always put forward as a guiding question. So in this case, how do we write powerful endings for our stories? We have our directions there. And then we have some success criteria. And you'll also notice that we have the audio instructions. So let me just sort of show you what this post looks like. This is the, pardon me. I touched a tab for a minute and I went a little crazy. So give me a second. So back to this. Oh, Lord. This is what we love about online learning, right? Okay. Just give me a second. My apologies. My screen just split. There we go. And let me go back to sharing. All right. Thank you for your patience. Here we go again. Take two. All right, so here's the post. And I'm just going to go ahead and play it. And hopefully everyone can hear it. Let me know if you can hear it well.
Okay, so this is the end of my story. It says, when we reached the shore, the lifeguard scolded us for not paying attention to our surroundings. He said there was a shark swimming around close to us. Wow, I felt so relieved that we made it back. I know that I will pay more attention from now on. And when I look at the types of endings, I think it has two types. It brings the story full circle because it brings us back to where we started, on the shore. So we make it back to the shore, which means we come all the way from the beginning to the end, and then we make it back where we're supposed to be. And then I also put bring out the meaning, because I learned a lesson in my story to pay more attention from now on. And so the meaning of the story is to learn to pay attention.
All right, so this was the teacher's exemplar. You saw the anatomy of the post, and then here's the actual example and lesson. And then let's see. Now we know if kids understand it, if there's teacher clarity, based upon our student responses, don't we? We know if we did a good job. So let's see how this teacher did. And here's one of the student examples. You can see a picture of their work, and then now he's going to share a reflection about how he made choices around creating powerful endings in his writing.
The types of endings that make my story more powerful were solve the problem and leave the reader to something to think about. Solve the problem because at the beginning we were playing a game that was boring. So we decided to create a new game. That makes me wonder that if we work in a team, we can find a good thing to do.
By the way, this is a second grade post. So just in the chat there, what do you think? How does this lesson demonstrate teacher clarity? What are some big ideas that you take away from this post? Oh, you couldn't hear clearly. Okay. Well, we want to be thinking about some of the anatomy of the post, and we also want to be thinking about the student responses in there. And I'd like to sort of share with you, I'll move on, and I'll share with you an upper school example. This is called a playlist. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is definitely something you might see, and I'll share it in the chat. You want to look at an example of this. This teacher here had created a research-based argument writing playlist. And in this situation, they have created a series of activities for a project. And so be looking at this is different. There's no instructional videos here per se by the teacher, but this is a Google document that they made that has a series of activities that they need in order to learn more about this topic. And so in your, as you look through this, what do you think? Do you think this playlist is an effective example of demonstrating teacher clarity? So we want to be thinking whether or not, whatever platform we're using, whether we're using the Microsoft platform, or we're using Google Docs or the Google for Education suite, whatever learning management and platforms that we use and tools that we use, we want to just make sure that it's not about the bells and whistles. It's about the brevity, the simplicity, and the ability to communicate the learning expectations clearly. And assessment is a huge part of that. When we think about visible learning, you know, Hattie and his colleagues give us 3 questions again that act as a roadmap. So the first one is around, where am I going? This is the success criteria. The second one is, how am I going to get there? And that's sort of the process of learning. And then the final question is, where will I go next? And this is sort of the ability for students to self-regulate and self-navigate their learning. Particularly, we're seeing this is really important in the online context. And so here's another example of a Seesaw post from our team here. And what should be thinking about, how does this demonstrate teacher clarity? So I'm going to just circle the success criteria here and just think for a moment, is this helpful or not? Is this effective or not? In this situation, he is asking the students to find items around the house and divide them into groups. So this is, the idea is, what is the meaning of an unknown in a division sentence? So this is beginnings of division, and this is in 3rd grade context. The success criteria was, I watched the instructional video. I used items that I could find in my house and divided them equally between at least 2 people in my household. I took a picture of the equal groups and I wrote a division sentence to represent the problem I created. And the 4th thing is, I posted my best work to Seesaw. Now, of course, we know that we know immediately whether or not we had good clarity in our success criteria, because when you go to the student work samples, you will see that right away, wouldn't you? And so I'm happy to say that that was the case, that kids were able to do that successfully, and there were lots of really interesting answers there. So again, be thinking about success criteria and how that really sets up for success. Now, the next thing I want to talk about regarding that is feedback. I don't know about you, but I feel like feedback is on steroids now because of the asynchronized learning situation. I know on our team, teachers give at least, homeroom teachers have at least 3 posts a day. We have about 22 students per class. So we're thinking about 66 comments that they have to give. And so getting good at feedback has really been an important aspect of our teams here. Teachers get together, they decide whether or not they're going to give feedback, what kind of feedback they're going to give, and the quality of the feedback. Because not all tasks that we do with students are assessment, and that we're measuring it for some things, or sometimes that's just for informing our instruction, right? But when we give feedback to students, we need to make sure it is specific. We have to explain, what is the focus? Why is this important? What's the purpose of this learning? And most importantly, how can I improve? And so with that in mind, I want to dig a little bit deeper into this and consider that when those students are listening to your audio comments, or they're listening to feedback on a video, or even in written responses, that's an interaction that you're having between you and the student. How is that making them feel? So there's really sort of 3 ways we can think about it when a student posts work. They either got it, they totally met the standard that we were looking for our expectation, and so we want to describe it. We want to give them a compliment. We want to name it and notice it, what they did well, because we want more of that. We want to encourage that, don't we? We want to keep the kids motivated. Now, there's sometimes students, they do part of the assignment, or they were so close, but they didn't quite get it. We want to give them a nudge. And the nudge, again, is this strategy. We name and notice things, but then we redirect them to our learning goals. And you can try this via a curiosity statement. I'm wondering how might we add, it just depends on your context, but you want to be very specific in what action they could take next. So even in and I'm wondering, or how might we, you always want to give them some specific action that they could take to improve their learning. And sometimes you might ask them to add it in the comments below, or whatever learning management system you have that you want to see them do that. But you want to give them that nudge to help them recognize that they were nearly there, but they still have some work to do. And the final thing is the push. The push is when we name and notice the possible misunderstanding. So yes, I really liked it when you did this, but it seems to me that you missed this aspect of it. It feels to me like you didn't quite understand the direction. So now I want you to go back and repeat this. So this might be in our context with using Seesaw, we can actually send back the work and have the children revise and edit it again. I don't know if that's true for other platforms, but that's something that we sometimes have to push back the work and have the kids do it again. And we have a very collaborative team environment. So teachers actually, they get together in team meetings and they discuss, are we going to send back student work, yes or no? Or are we just going to make some comments? So these are all aspects that you need to ensure that there's consistency even amongst your grade level and how you're doing this. But ultimately, the feedback that we give needs to be very specific and on point so that we can have those opportunities for students to review and revise their learning. And so thinking forward here, I want you to think about, I've really been focusing on asynchronized lessons here. What might be the success criteria when we think about that? So through the lens of organization, if you were going to describe it through an I can statement, I can what? What would you do in order to ensure that your asynchronized lessons like Seesaw, like Google Classroom, whatever platform you use, is well organized, that students can understand the content and the directions that you're giving? The second area is be thinking about what is the success criteria around an explanation. What makes teachers' explanations really helpful and direct? And when I showed you that example of that Seesaw post with the writing assignment, you'll see it wasn't a very long example. It was very on point. It was very sharp. She had a specific thing that she wanted the students to do, and then they were able to demonstrate that. So our explanations need to be very clear-cut and purposeful. The third thing that we need to be thinking about, of course, is regarding assessment. And what is it that we really want to be the kids to demonstrate? That's success criteria in a nutshell, but also any other elements that you might have there that you'll be assessing. So what might be some thoughts around assessment and making it clear and consistent for students? And then also around this idea of what else? What else are we missing? What other things do you think we need to be considering that would make our asynchronized lessons more effective and helpful for students? Is there another criteria that you would add? I don't know, this is one that I'm wondering about, but I'm just curious if there is something else that you feel is really important and vital for an asynchronized lesson. So now it's your turn. I want you to reflect. I know I threw a lot of stuff at you, but I want you to reflect. What area do you feel as an educator that you could improve on? 78% of you said you're completely online. Another 14% said you're on hybrid, so that means you're still doing some component of online learning. What part of this do you think that you could improve your teacher clarity? Do you feel like organization is an area to do it? Do you think it's around explanation? Or do you think it's around assessment? What would you choose, and why is that important? Please take a moment to reflect on that. I think it's Aristotle who said, to know and not do is to actually not understand something. And so whenever we learn something, we always want to move it forward. So definitely take a moment to reflect on this and think about how can you improve your your ability to be effective and clear in the online context. So that's all I have. I was trying to be very short and sharp on everything, but please stay in touch. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and on my website. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much for that fantastic presentation, Judy. It was so insightful. It almost makes me want to go and start teaching a primary class, although I've never done it myself. Always wanted to, but never did. That said, there are some fantastic insights that have come in from the participants. Some beautiful reflections coming in about how teachers feel that student helping guides are great. They also feel that a lot of them felt that when you were talking previously about the I can statements as well, they felt that was a very useful way of making students also feel very empowered and giving them much greater agency with regards to their own learning. So some fantastic bits in there. I love the push and the nudge pieces that you talked about. I thought that was so useful. And I think that's
Hattie says that, when we give feedback, it shouldn't be about what's right or wrong. It's about what's next. What can I do to improve? And
absolutely.
So I think it's important to have a structure. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think somebody very rightly pointed out that we are moving forward from feedback to feed forward. And I think that's such a useful way of looking at this. So I'm sorry, but their name got lost somewhere in the chat, but somebody in the chat said that. There are a couple of questions though that have come in. So I'll take the first one, which is by Virali. Virali, it's a very interesting question. She's asking, what makes a better exemplar? A teacher's work or a student's work?
I think it depends on your grade level, because with the younger children, I think they always want to see an example of what's an approximation that's right for them. So if we were to do a very sophisticated example, I think kids would really feel, whether consciously or unconsciously, sort of like, oh gosh, that's too hard for me, and they may not give it a go. So we always, even if we create a teacher example, we always want to hit it at that student's age group and ability. So I think it's just really up to you. I love sharing peer work as well. So in my own practice, I think it just depends on your content and what you're doing. But a mixture of both perhaps, but always at the level of where they are, their zone of proximal development. We always want to be thinking about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that you made about giving students ideas for improvement also, offers various entry points into these gaps, right? It's not as if there's only one hardcore way of improving something. And there was somebody in the chat also who was talking about how noticing is such an important skill for us as teachers. To be able to notice how students have attempted a problem could also sometimes work as an exemplar. Since you were talking about exemplars just now, I thought noticing how a student has solved something differently or attempted something differently, which we can pick up and also share as exemplars. They may not necessarily be end products, but they're also process exemplars, and this is how you could try and do something. So as opposed to just having an end product ready and say, oh, hey, this is what it should look like at the end. There are various ways of showing them, okay, so this is how you could get to that end. So that was a lovely comment about noticing. Okay, great. So we'll keep coming back to some of these questions, and I know that they'll keep popping up as the session progresses. So thank you, Judy, for all your insights, and I'll now pass the floor on to Kirtida to talk about some of the strategies for making learning visible, as well as sketchnoting, which we've all been very eagerly waiting to learn about. So over to you, Kirtida.
Thank you. Thanks, Pallavi. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Judy, for that amazing presentation. It was really, really nice. I really enjoyed listening to you, and something that you said about exemplars kind of stuck with me, and that's something I'll talk about when I talk about my presentation. So yeah, so I know it's been a tough time for all of us around the globe, but you know what? Teachers are tough, and we have proved it. So take a break. I mean, just reflect on the quote that's on the screen. It says, visible learning and teaching occurs when teachers see learning through the eyes of students and help them become their own teachers. This is a quote by John Hattie, who is the pioneer of the Making Learning Visible movement. And this quote is very important to us as well, because you know, it is important for you to know where you are, where you stand as a learner, and what is it that you need to work on yourselves. And it's very important to become a co-learner with the students, you know. And this lockdown has showed us all that we can all be learners. The fact that close to 500 of you are here today shows that you are all learners. Okay, you are all lifelong learners. You've come here to learn something new, or you know, affirm your understanding about something that you already have. So thank you so much for being here. I don't think you can talk about making learning visible without talking about making thinking visible, or MTV. If you keep hearing me when I keep saying MTV, that means it's making thinking visible. This is a research-based framework developed by Project Zero at Harvard University, with Ron Richard and Mark Church at its forefront. A lot of well-researched tools and strategies, and we'll be sharing a Wakelet link with some of those with you along with this presentation. I'm sure a lot of us use visible thinking routines in our class, and many of us will swear by it. And during their workshops and webinars, you know, both Ron and Mark amplify that visible thinking routines are tools to make thinking visible in the classroom. You need to use them to unfold and scaffold student thinking, and this in turn will lead to making their learning visible. Now, these are not just supposed to be activities that you use in the lesson plan because you want your lesson plan to look great, but they need to be very intentional. You need to be very clear about your learning outcomes, what thinking moves you want your students to master. Then documenting these routines is very, very important. Okay, you don't just document it, but you know, you use them to inform your planning. Only then they will become a little more than just an activity in your classroom. Making thinking visible is a culture. It's a culture that you want to set in your school or in your classroom. And just like any other routine you will use to manage behavior in your classroom, visible thinking routines are exactly that. They are routines that help you manage thinking, which leads to deeper learning. They have come up with a lot of new routines, which is a part of the new book, that is the power of making thinking visible. This is a sketch note I created after a webinar that I attended, which was hosted by Chapters International. um, I'm going to talk about this one routine. I love this routine. This is the making meaning routine, and it's one of my favorites. And I've used it for a training program with teachers, and I have done it myself in a Project Zero workshop. It is a great routine. It can be done at the start of the unit, at the end of the unit as a summative assessment. You can do it in the middle of the unit. You can use it at any grade level, any age level. And like most VTRs, you just need to tweak it to your context. So this is the step one of this routine, where you write the topic in the middle of the page, and usually you need about 4 to 5 participants are the best. If you want to have 6 or 7, that's also fine, depending on your age level. So each participant writes a word that comes to their mind when they look at the word that's in the middle, which is a topic or a concept. Then step 2 is they use another color to add more words or phrases to the words that are already written in step 1. Then comes step 3, where you connect all the words and phrases, and while you're connecting them, you write explanations on the lines that connect them. I will show you some samples as well, so you'll get to know what I'm talking about. After you're done with all these connections, again, we cannot know anything and everything about a particular topic. It also, you know, you'll always have questions about it. So here you also do another thinking move, which is where you wonder and you write your questions down in whatever empty space is left. Each stage needs to be done with a different color just to make it more distinct. Now you step back, you look at all the words, you look at all the phrases, you look at all the explanations, and you create your own definition of that concept or that topic. This is a sample that I did with the Heartfulness Learning Center at Hyderabad, where we did this making meaning routine with student agency as our concept. And after they finished creating the definitions, they went ahead and put it on the Padlet, which is what you see in the screenshot over there. This is this is a sample that I did with my group during a Project Zero workshop. I want you to observe how each word connects to the different phrases, and how, in order to make more connections and build deeper understanding, each of the lines has an explanation as to why it connects. Okay, this routine is super rich. It allows students to share their voice. It allows them to make connections. It allows them to construct their own meaning. And this is what, and this is what it's all about. Almost all visible thinking routines are rich in student agency. Now, I'm going to stop here for a minute, maybe 30 seconds, and ask you, where do you see yourself using this routine? I can actually see I think someone has already shared that they've used this routine in their class, and I would love to know, where else do you think you can use this routine, the making meaning routine? Okay, you can unpack the central idea. Yes, Shivani, you're right. Great. Yeah, every stage of inquiry cycle, definitely. Introduction to the lesson, you're right. This will give you the understanding of where your students are. It's a wonderful tuning in activity also to understand what your students know about that particular concept. So you can use it in math, you can use it in geography. This is for the higher grades. You can use it in any subject. In fact, I know of some people who've used it to talk about bullying and kindness also. Okay, so you can use it for everything. Summarizing the unit history, my God, the chat is on fire and I love it. So the next strategy I'm going to share is my favorite, because it's engaging, it's creative, it's fun, and it's original every time I use it. Okay, this strategy, it's actually a skill. So this strategy can be used for any subject, any grade, any unit. Okay, I have tried to blend some visible thinking routines along with this. So if you follow me on if you follow me on social media, you must have seen my sketch notes. And I do not claim to be an expert on sketchnoting. I know Pallavi called me the resident expert on sketchnoting, but I believe me, I'm no expert. I'm still learning. I'm still a learner. But having done it myself, I've understood that the benefits of sketchnoting are many. Because I believe in it so much, it is something that I always talk to my teachers, my team of teachers, or even when I'm taking part in tweet chats. So before we go ahead, what do you think sketchnoting could be? Just quickly, could you just go ahead and put? Agreed, Judy. We are all learners in all areas. We are all lifelong learners. Could you just quickly tell me what do you think sketchnoting could be? Okay, Anjali says she's used this strategy in her class. Yes, it is verbal to visual. Excellent. Right. Text plus visuals, right? Visual note taking, confining my thoughts into shapes. Yes, great. That's exactly what sketchnoting is. And it's basically sketching or drawing alongside taking notes. And a lot of people call it doodling as well. Many of them think it's a distracting engagement, but believe me, it actually has an opposite effect. I love creating my sketch notes on paper. There are tech tools available that we can create sketch notes on. The first sketch note, that was the power of making thinking visible sketch note that you saw above, was created on Google Slides. I really have to thank, I'll be amiss if I do not give a shout out to my friend Shivani Gulati, who actually asked me to go ahead and inspired me to use Google Slides to create sketch notes, and then I graduated to pen and paper. So thank you, Shivani, for that. And now let's go ahead. And why sketchnoting? What do you think are the benefits of sketchnoting? Okay, so Deshna says making connections to main ideas, noting down things in which we can understand easily, processing information, concentration, interesting. Yes, Jyoti, it is definitely interesting. There is retention, imagery, clarity, visual input. Oh my God. Yes, you're right. You know what? If I don't share why sketchnoting in form of a sketch note, I think then something is not right with me. So here's my sketch note on why sketchnoting. Okay, it is multi-sensory. It involves visual, auditory, and kinesthetic styles. I find it very, very calming. It helps me de-stress. Then it's a great way to note the most important points from a session, a book, or a video. And because someone says brain remembers the sketch, why? Because your brain is using dual coding. Okay, at the same time, your brain is trying to think of images with text and trying to make those connections. And this helps to increase our memory and focus. A lot of connection making, a very high level of metacognition is involved while making a sketch note. So you think, you reflect, and you sketch note. What I want you to do here is I want you to observe. So this is a process that I have tried with my second graders in the school. So I'm doing this with you today. So hopefully, ones who want to take sketchnoting back to class are trying to figure out, how do I do it with my students. You could probably follow this process or create your own. What I want you to do is I want you to observe the two sketch notes very carefully. We are going to do a thinking routine called paths, purposes, and complexities. You will see prompt for each of the stages, and we'll talk about, we'll take about 20 to 25 seconds to, just see what everyone is talking about. I mean, what everyone responds to in the chat. So that's the first question. The first question is, what are all of its parts or features? What do you see in these sketch notes? What do you see in these in both these sketch notes that are there right now? What are the different parts? What are the different features you see? Neelam says, she says a central idea, illustrations and words, fonts, visuals, creativity, thoughts, bubbles, yes, pictures, words, information. Great, superb. Now my next question, banners, yes, banners, concepts, color, pics, superb. So my next question, my next prompt is, what does each part do, or what does each feature do? Why do you think each of these features is here? I mean, do we even need them? Thoughts and pictorial form, right? What do you think each of these yeah, it provokes inquiry, yeah, sensory simulation. Excellent, Sunanda, yes. They help your brain to code. Catch attention, very, very attention catching, connects to central ideas, puts thoughts into written, and builds curiosity, explains, makes connection. Superb. And my last prompt is, do these parts work together? What would happen if one of them went missing? What do you think is going to happen if one of them goes missing? Or is it okay if certain parts are not there? Are they all working together to kind of give you a more cohesive picture? Okay, needs to work hand in hand. Boring, right, Judy? Yeah, it could get boring, could look monotonous. It is a complete structure. May not have a whole picture, right? Great, superb. So that's what it is, and it will lose its beauty. Great. Yeah, all parts are important, but let me just tell you here, sometimes it's the point of sketchnoting is nothing is right, nothing is wrong. So it's perfectly fine if one of the parts is missing, but it makes it more fun to look at when there are different, the different features exist. So again, another virtual sketch note made on Google Slides, the different features of a sketch note, just to kind of bring the the visible thinking routine together. Most sketch notes will have these 5 features, but again, it's not hard and fast. It does not, excellent, you're right, Zainab. It's not like a fixed structure, and it's perfectly fine. It's a creative process. Some choose to color, some choose to use just one color, and some can even keep it black and white. I know one kid who came up to me and told me, ma'am, I just want to keep it black and white. And I'm like, go ahead. That's what agency is all about. And that's what sketchnoting is all about. It's all about agency. So these are the 5 main features that you can see in a sketch note. Certain tips that you need to remember. It's important to spend some time visualizing what your sketchnoting would look like. I know it feels like, oh, this is a lot of work to do, but it becomes easier by, with practice. Having a visual library of icons and fonts and containers helps a lot. It definitely helps me. I have some on my phone. So every time I do a sketch note and I'm stuck somewhere, I quickly go through my phone and see my visual library. And that's really helped me. Then I've started, I started creating them on Google Slides. Even those I kept refining. So it's very important to refine and then share it. Then use quotes and puns, just make it fun. And most importantly, whenever you sketchnote, just have fun. Don't worry about, oh, how it's going to look. Oh, are people going to like it? I did that a lot when I started. And believe me, now I just sketchnote for fun. I do it because I like to do it. and it helps me to go back to my own learning. It has helped me make my learning visible for me. So every time I want to look at something, I just go back and quickly go through the sketch notes that I have made. Something that I should share with you is my sketch notes not only help me, they have helped all my friends and colleagues on social media as well. So people who have not attended a particular webinar have gone ahead and looked at the sketch note, and they're like, oh, so this is what happened. So it's just a creative process, just go ahead and have fun with it. Then I like I told you, I took a virtual sketchnoting class with my second graders at Crossroads. They looked at 4 to 5. Again, what I did with you was a very compact process. This took a good 1 hour. I think, yeah, 1 hour over 2 days. So I had 1 hour with them on Monday and 1 hour on Tuesday. So it took a good 2 hours for this whole thing. They observed 4 to 5 sketch notes, and like Judy talked about the exemplars that you see on the slide were not the exemplars I used with them. I used some really simpler ones because they were second graders, and they observed the different features. What they did was they did the explanation game thinking routine, where they observed the different features, explained the function, gave evidence of it, and even thought of alternatives to make it look better. They also talked about where else they thought this skill could work. Then some of the kids even came up with certain features that I thought I could use in my sketch note. So someone talked about using borders in the sketch note. So I don't have borders in any of my sketch notes, and I'm really going to try to do that. So the point here is, kids love to color, kids love to draw, adults love to color, adults love to draw. So why not we leverage this love? Why not we leverage this passion, this interest that every kid seems to have, and just help, use it to make our learning deeper and visible. Here are some of the student samples. If you can see, uh, look at each of them. Each of them these are all grade 2 samples, by the way. Each of them are very, very unique. You won't even be able to tell one from the other. I mean, look at how amazingly unique, original, and creative this process is. I just love the amount of agency that shows, that the kids have shown. So the ones that you see with the icons in there, which talks about an inspiring, really motivating story, that was a sketch note these kids created after a guest session. So now these kids are they're already transferring the skill, by the way. They just did one sketch note with me. So some of them did math, some of them did English, and they've already started to transfer this skill into other contexts. Now, a lot of you may think, oh, I'm not that great at art. Yeah, mujhe to drawing hi nahi aati. I'm not an artist myself. Believe me, I am not an artist too. Someone asked, do I have a degree in art? No, I don't have a degree in art. I just love drawing. I just love coloring. In fact, my grade 6 teacher told me I'm not a good artist. She didn't let me sit for a government art exam. And it's taken me more than, I don't know how many years, to take a pencil back into my hand and start sketchnoting again. So believe me, allow them to express themselves through art, allow them to express themselves through sketchnote. There's nothing wrong or right in sketchnote, and it's just a very creative and a very agentic process. So these are the resources that are going to be shared with you. One of these wakelets is created by my friend Bhavna, and making thinking visible will have a different visible routines that you saw today, and some more from the old book as well. And sketchnoting the sketchnoting wakelets will have a lot of resources for you to start your own journey as a sketchnoter. Believe me, try it. I strongly suggest you try it first, because maybe create one for this session or for any other webinar, because there's nothing, only when you see the beauty of it, you're going to be able to convince your kids to see the beauty of it. For people who want to, so a lot of people are talking about virtual tools. Procreate and Sketchboard are paid tools. They have a slightly higher learning curve. Adobe Spark, Slides, and Bunsy. Google Slides. I make all my virtual sketch notes on Google Slides. So Google Slides is free of cost. So is Bunsy. I'm not Bunsy. I'm not sure if Bunsy is free, But Adobe Spark is not free, but a lot of its features are free. So go ahead and try these to create your own sketchnoting. I know a lot of people in the audience today who use Bunsy to create their sketchnotes, and Spark as well. Um, these are some of the sketchnoting stalwarts to follow. Carrie is my guruma. She's the one who gave me the, gave me the confidence to start sketchnoting on paper. She has a YouTube channel. Sylvia and Chris are both veteran sketchnoters. Most of their sketchnotes are virtual. And I know Chris uses Procreate to create his sketchnotes. Go ahead, follow them on Twitter, follow them on Instagram. They're always sharing amazing tips and tricks to create these sketchnotes. I cannot conclude this session without doing a thinking routine with you all. So I'm going to ask Pallavi to share the Padlet link with you. Let's conclude this session with this thinking routine, where you can go ahead and do it on the other, you know, you can go ahead and do it after the session as well. So make sure you read each prompt, pause and reflect on it. Why is making learning visible matter? Why does it matter to me? Start with your personal connection, then move to local. Why would it matter to your community? Your community is your parents, your students, your school, your country, and then go to your, then move out into the global and connect globally as to why it would matter to the why it would matter to the world. Making learning visible is the need of the hour, especially now that we've gone online and we are going to be online for quite a while. So please share your thoughts on Padlet, and I would love to see what your responses are. And it's going to be an open Padlet. I'm going to keep it open so you guys can see what other people share as well. I cannot, please feel free to connect with me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Again, last but not the least, thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you, Haya. Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, all of you, for giving me this amazing opportunity to share my passion and my journey as a sketchnoter with you all. Go ahead, use these tools, use these strategies with your students, try them out for yourself, have lots of fun. You're welcome to connect with me anytime. I would love to collaborate with you. Remember, times are tough. Don't forget to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Be unique, be strong, stay safe, and don't forget to shine. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much for that absolutely fantastic. It was just so visually beautiful to take in everything that you shared on the screen. It was really, really great. Thank you so much for putting sketchnoting out there as a teacher tool. I think for a lot of us, it was sort of unexplored before this. For many teachers, artistic pursuits tend to become something which only are pursued if at all teachers feel that they have the artistic proclivity. If they feel that they are artists themselves, so they can go out there and draw these things out and get the kids to draw as well. So I'm just going to close today's session with a couple of questions that had come up. I think one of the common questions which I thought we could very quickly but just to sort of clarify, there is no difference between mind mapping and sketchnoting in the sense of it being used in a classroom. A sketchnote can most certainly become a mind map.
Yes.
It's a visual representation of ideas at the end of the
Right.
day. So a lot of connections can be drawn there. There were two very interesting questions that had come up, and I'd open these out both to Judy as well as to Kirtida. The first one was, there's Vishal, who teaches English as an additional language. He wanted to ask how sketchnotes can be used for elementary students, especially to teach perhaps vocabulary or reading comprehension. Kirtida, if you had any inputs for Vishal that you'd like to share.
Yeah, Vishal, I should definitely point out and give a shout out to my friend Bhavna, who has gone ahead and used sketchnoting for her students, and she's an English support teacher. And so what she does is she has kids read a particular story, and the kids create a sketchnote on that story. I wish I had, I've also created one on one of the stories that I read. I wish I had shared it today, but so basically you can use it to, kids could sketchnote their understanding of a grammar concept. They could sketchnote their reflection on a story. That's what sketchnoting is. You can use it for anything and everything. So you just have to kind of try it and see where it works, and just do a bit of trial and error there. Yes, I'm sorry. there's one question that says, can we have sketch notes for kindergarten? Yes, you can. Those kids loved creativity. Please go ahead and try sketchnoting with kindergarten. Again, the complexity will obviously differ. The way they make their sketch notes will obviously differ. So whatever works for your
Absolutely.
context.
Absolutely. Judy, I think you might want to take this one up because this has more to do with asynchronous learning, as you were talking about earlier. Rashmi wanted to ask if there are any specific suggestions that you might have, which you would want to share with her in terms of making asynchronous learning sessions more interactive. What could we possibly do to make that kind of learning more hands-on?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real challenge, isn't it? So that actually is something where you have to expand your toolbox, in my opinion. And that's something that we've worked well with, like Flipgrid, or Padlet's a great way to actually do a lot of interactivity. Wakelet's a new one. So I think it just really depends also on your the learning management system that you have, because you could open it up, like if you use Google Classroom, kids can make comments on each other's work. It's just really providing access and opportunity for kids to interact, because they're longing for that. They're craving that. So if you put the structures there, I believe that, you know, kids will definitely engage, be more engaged, but it does require a little bit more professional learning if you're not a techie person. There are a lot of stuff though, otherwise. Yeah.
Super. Okay, one last question before we sign off for today. The participants have been so active. They've been wonderful questions coming in throughout the evening today. And I thought this was particularly useful, and Vasundhara is asking that, have any of you, either of you, used sketchnoting or mind maps as assessments of student knowledge, or have they sort of been a part of assessments that you have conducted in your classroom? So great question, Vasundhara. Thank you for asking that one.
Why not? That's an awesome idea. I love it.
It is. Just adding to that is, so everything that you do in the class can become an assessment, a formative assessment, which kind of tells you where the kids are. So now I know when I saw the second graders creating their sketch notes, I'm trying to observe if all of them are using the different features correctly, or is there anything that they need to understand. So now and the fact that many of them have gone ahead and transferred it to a different context shows me that they've understood this entire process, and they've like internalized it really well. So definitely you can use it for as an summative assessment, formative assessment. In fact, that's what even visible thinking routines do. You know, they can be used as assessments as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I know this is one last question. I know I said last time, but this one came up, so I just thought I'll take it nonetheless. Is there a smart way to sketchnote? Should it be ad hoc, or can we templatize it? Aditya is asking that one.
Aditya, believe me, I started by templatizing it before. Let me be honest. Okay, I started taking notes down before, because I just couldn't do a live sketch note. And I'm like, how do people do it, and how is it possible? So something that I've understood is, now I do after 30 sketch notes. By the way, I've done about 30 sketch notes since June, and now I've become a little more confident about doing it ad hoc. But it's perfectly fine if you start templatizing it to start with. Again, when you're saying templatizing, you don't have the same template for everything, because it has to be unique, it has to be original. So maybe have different visual templates ready, that this is how I want my sketch notes to look. So and you start templatizing it and then move to becoming ad hoc. That's what I would say. I mean, because that's the process I followed. So
absolutely. That's fantastic. And thank you, Judy, and thank you, Kitida, for all of your answers, as well as for sharing all these fantastic resources with all of us today, for shining the light on how learning can be made more visible, how teachers can get more clarity on their teaching and learning processes. So thank you both for that. Just very quickly, as a reminder to all participants, the recording as well as the panelist presentations will be shared via email to all those of you who registered. If you go back to our Facebook group, the live session shows up as a recording that you can view once again as well. So you don't have to wait for the recording to go up on YouTube. You can go right back to the Facebook group and and see this. But for later and for sharing, you can most certainly refer to the YouTube recording. The deadline for submitting your responses to today's session, and I think all of us should submit a sketch note today for sure,
Yes.
Based on all the lovely things that Kirtida and Judy have shared, and make your learning visible. Like let us see how you've been able to go out and make your learning from this session visible. So do send us your responses of your learning by Sunday 6 p.m. The team reviews these by Sunday, so unfortunately we won't be able to acknowledge those that come in post 6 p.m. So please make sure you meet the deadline. And for next week, because Mindfulness Day and World Mental Health Day is coming up, our next webinar is going to be focusing on mindfulness as a student habit. So for those of you who are looking to learn more about mindfulness, mental health for your students, especially in these trying times, do sign in next week as well. And on that note, I am going to wish you all a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you once again to our lovely panelists and to our fantastic participants for a fabulous interactive session. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Ciao for now.
Thank you.